Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Advice for Life, lesson one of a six-part series that I am incredibly excited. So please crack open those books, roll up your sleeves. Firstly, apologies for the late start. I was trying to figure out a new system. You can see there's three different technological gadgets out. I think four if you include this. Trying to figure out how to make sure everyone could see everything equally. For those that are in person and on Zoom, still have to perfect it, but I want to make sure everyone can see the screen. When it's the video time, I will move out of the way so everyone is able to see it here in person, and hopefully the people on Zoom could see it just as well. The reason why I wanted to make sure the screens are working as best as we can is because one of the main parts of this course is actually going to be multimedia. It's going to be video based. Then instead of me telling you what the Rebbe teaches or advises, you will be able to see it for yourself. And then you could also later share it, because after the class, I will send you an email that will have the entire PowerPoint, as well as all the videos and additional videos that you could either rewatch, share with a friend about some wisdom that you learned, some nuggets of a Torah teaching. And that way, instead of you just having it as memory, it's also something that you could watch, rewatch, and share with someone else. Everyone's with me? Okay, cool. Everyone here has a book. For those that are on Zoom, if you didn't yet get a book, either it wasn't mailed to you yet or you didn't come pick it up, I posted a link in the chat. So you could click on that link and you'll have a PDF of the first lesson. Okay, so those are some formalities. Most of the lessons are going to be on a Tuesday, other than one of them in the middle of June, June 4th, I think, the beginning of June. It's going to be on a Monday instead of a Tuesday, just because Tuesday night is the first night of Shavuot, a holiday commemorating the giving of the Torah. And traditionally, people stay up all night learning. So if you plan to come Tuesday night next week, you'll be stuck here all night, because that's how we learn on the first night of Shavuot. So for that week, it'll be on, I think it's June 4th. It's on a Monday instead of on a, is that a Monday? All right, so then it will probably be that one instead of June 4th. So that's the only one that's going to be on a Monday instead of a Tuesday. All the rest of them are going to be on a Tuesday evening. With me? Okay. All right, so now let's officially start the course. The course name is Advice for Life. I am incredibly excited for this course because all the other courses are taking a topic and expounding on it. So whether it's a Talmud topic or whether it's a kind of a DIY, do it yourself, how to overcome a temptation inside of you type of topic, whether it's more Kabbalistic, whether it's more Tanya based, it was all a specific topic that we would unpack and uncover based on the wisdom of the Torah. This course is a little different, where it's taking wisdom that throughout the span of the Rebbe's life, he shared with people based on Torah, but it's how it came through the Rebbe's lens of the world. And that's where we're going to be focusing on, taking the wisdom of the Rebbe and trying to incorporate that in our lives. Now, this is obviously personal to me because my parents and my in-laws changed their entire life around for the Torah. But their parents had the Torah, and their grandparents also had the Torah. But what changed for my parents and in-laws is the way they understood the Torah after speaking to the Rebbe. And it wasn't only the Torah teachings that the Rebbe gave them that inspired them. It was the practical advice when my mother was struggling while living in Paris and uncertain on the next step she should take in her life. She sat down with the Rebbe and had a conversation in French with the Rebbe in the Chabad headquarters. You'll hear me refer to it as 770, which is the number or the street number of the address of Chabad headquarters at 770 Eastern Parkway. And for my mother, that guidance and advice that the Rebbe gave her put her on the trajectory of her life that she changed everything around for. And the same with my my in-laws. But the same is with world leaders that came to the Rebbe. And the same is with simple people. So what is it about the guidance, the wisdom of the Rebbe? So let's start with just a very brief biography. In the beginning of your textbook, you'll have a more of an expanded biography. So on your own, you could do that. But the Rebbe was born in 1902 in Ukraine, in a town called Nikolaev, which is actually where my grandmother was born as well, a couple years later. And he is known, or was known, as one of the most impactful Jewish leaders in the post-Holocaust era. In 1950, after his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, passed away, he assumed leadership over Chabad. Now, 100 years ago, Chabad in Russia was very well established. It was one of the great Hasidic courts that was flourishing and thriving with hundreds of thousands of followers. But then Chabad was almost entirely decimated in Europe by the Nazis and in Russia by the Soviets, to the point where there was almost no one left. Even the previous Rebbe in the 1920s, he himself was arrested and sentenced to death until, with international pressure, especially American pressure, he ended up being sent out of Russia, not killed. But the point is that the number of Hasidim shrunk dramatically at the time, 1950, when the Rebbe was taking over leadership over Chabad. Now, from that time of 1950, when the Rebbe's father-in-law passed away, till today, the Rebbe took a group of post-war Hasidim that were Yiddish speaking, and he made Chabad into literally the largest of Jewish organizations of outreach in the world. Just Monday, I received a text from someone in our community who's visiting the desert, Palm Springs, and he texts me, "You guys are everywhere." He was just at a farmer's market in the desert, and there's a Chabad rabbi at a booth with that says, "Ask the rabbi anything." And he goes up to him and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm friends with, like, I know the rabbi in Marin, and the rabbi there knows me." And like, he was just impressed that everywhere he goes, from whether you're in Angola or Zimbabwe, you'll find a Chabad, and every country and letter in between. So when I refer to Rebbe or the Rebbe, I'm referring to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The reason why we say Lubavitch is because for over 100 years, the center of the Hasidic dynasty of Chabad was in a Belarusian town called Lubavitch, which means brotherly love. And there are many other Hasidic sects. So there's Belz and there's Satmar and a bunch of different sects of Hasidic circles that each have their own Rebbe that they would listen to. But while there could be many other great Hasidic masters and Rebbes, simply when you talk to someone and you say, "Oh, the Rebbe," there's one Rebbe that gets the title of the Rebbe. Less widely known than the Rebbe's leadership skills, that how he was able to take a fraction of the Hasidic group of Chabad and expand it to be the largest Jewish outreach organization in the world, where there isn't a country that doesn't have a Chabad, and there's barely a Jewish person that didn't hear of Chabad. And actually, just someone sent me a short snippet of Jeopardy, where one of the questions on Jeopardy was a picture of 770 and saying, "What is this a headquarter of?" And her answer was, "What is Shabbat?" So she got it pretty close. But less widely known than the Rebbe's leadership skills was his scholarship. How the magnitude of his Torah teachings was unprecedented for centuries. Just an incredible depth of the Rebbe's knowledge and teachings, where started in 1950 in a small room that barely was able to fit 100 people. And then it expanded, and Vivian and Shira came with us to Crown Heights, and several others I'm sure have been. Michael, you've been to 770, to Crown Heights? To that, so that's a picture of the Rebbe sitting at the white table with thousands of Hasidim in the crowd at the bottom, and then the whole balcony on top filled with women listening to the Rebbe's scholarship and teachings of Torah. Hundreds of volumes of books have been published just of the Rebbe's teachings. So instead of taking my word for it, of the Rebbe's scholarship and leadership, to watch a video, I will move out of the way and let's see that. So, 1 second here. So that's the Rebbe.
You're looking at the PDF?
I can't get back to.
It isn't only the Jewish community that values him, it's the worldwide community. And so many come here to receive his blessing.
Today, the Rebbe will be posthumously awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. A man who dedicated his life to helping others and to bringing people together. The Speaker of the House and I have many disagreements, but there's one thing, there is at least one thing on which we do agree. That is the awarding of this medal. This award, it brought Democrats and Republicans, liberals, conservatives, northerners and southerners, blacks, whites, and Hispanics. It brought us all together.
I remember the 70th birthday. People say that he was the new Bar Shem Tov. I rather compared him to the Maggid of Meserich. Although he never moved, he didn't travel. The Bear of Meserich was the one actually who had built. The Rebbe was like the Maggid. He had vision and wisdom and knowledge and everything else, but in practical life, he was an architect. He knew whom to send where. I think the Shaliach himself didn't know why he was sent somewhere, but he knew. The Rebbe was an architect in this part, in this respect. He knew how to build.
And therefore, I have asked for the blessings of the Rabbi, of our great teacher. Rabbi Schneerson is a great man in Israel. All of us respect him. All of us accept his judgment. He is a great lover of the house of Israel. He has shown his deep sentiment and love for our children. His blessings are very important to me. I do hope they will strengthen me on that very important mission I am going to fulfill during the meetings with President Carter, the President of the United States.
A unique personality, no doubt, that serves as a leader for tremendous number of Jewish people, a person that on one hand lives in the world of the Torah, but has got practical sense to the realities of the life everywhere in the world, and great sensitivity for the preserving of the Jewish people.
Okay, so you were able to see from world leaders, mayors. I think the first mayor was Ed Koch, which many of you guys I'm sure remember. The last one, and Prime Minister Shamir, Menachem Begin, and Elie Wiesel. I mean, these are greats that we all heard of. So in terms of the leaders that came to get the Rebbe's wisdom, or scholars that came to get the Rebbe's understanding of Torah, that makes sense. But what about the ordinary people that weren't coming with question on Torah? They weren't coming with a question on leadership. because the Rebbe had great leadership. Simple people. What brought them to the Rebbe for advice? What skill did the Rebbe have to give them the advice when they could have been going to someone else? What is it that the Rebbe had that they came to him for advice? So of course, the Rebbe had great leadership. The Rebbe took a small group of Hasidim to become the largest Jewish outreach group that now has 5,000 centers across the world.
Is that all? It seems
like a lot more, right? We're all loud, so. I think that's a good question. It might be 5,000 Chabad centers, and there's several centers that have a number of couples that are there to lead, right? Different parts of the center, different. Interesting. Yeah, it might be even more. Good point.
What is a Chabad center? This is a Chabad
This is,
center.
and we would love to hire a youth couple to run the Hebrew school, the summer camp, a teen program. So, flourishing Chabad that, are established for decades, have a team of, shluchim, what we call the representatives, emissaries, and shluchot, the rebbitzins that are leading together. So it could be even more. You're right. That's a good point. But why not ask an expert about the many requests that weren't about scholarship, weren't about skills of leadership? It was guidance on mundane matters. Wouldn't they have been better to consult with an expert or with a specialist in their respective fields? Why were people addressing their questions and their requests to the Rebbe? What insight of information did the Rebbe have that they weren't able to get elsewhere? So during the next 6 weeks, we're going to be discovering, exploring together the Rebbe's wisdom on 6 general topics. Tonight, being work life, the Rebbe's view on retirement, and some incredible insights that the Rebbe has about a Jew in the workspace. Next week will be about the home space, the relationships that are developed in the home. We'll go then to the Rebbe's view on physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, how to face adversity and challenges. And a lot of these, we're actually going to be showing through video. So people's personal guidance of the Rebbe and the Rebbe himself sharing, which I found to be awesome. All right, so now we'll start it inside. If you look on page 4, as we are going to delve into a topic that's called holy work. Tonight's topic, we will focus on the subjects of work, career, money. What is the Rebbe's view on money? Is it good? Is it a necessary evil? What is the Torah view on money? So let's start with that. Question on page 4. It's an exercise. What is our intuitive, how do we view the relationship between Judaism and our financial lives? So number 1 question is, in your estimation, what is the Jewish religious view on work and career? Is it A, a necessary evil? Is it B, it's part and parcel of my spiritual mission and journey? Or C, it's neither. It's not intrinsically positive or negative. Our job is to just be honest. Or is it other? You want to either circle it, or you're definitely welcome to tell me what your thoughts. Let's start. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would say very likely it should be B, part and parcel of our spiritual mission and journey. Although it probably isn't that way most of the time.
Well, why do you think it is? Let's start with that.
Because our whole life really should really connect and have meaning across all facets of our experiences.
Who agrees with Michael? Good. Who disagrees? Michael, pretty good.
You nailed it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Tikkun olam, which is, I think it's amazing. You just kind of have to stop and remember. Like in my profession, I'm an educator, so I have to remember every child is a universe. Now it's,
Yeah.
that's part of what I do teach along.
Beautiful. So just in case the people on Zoom weren't able to hear all of that, Michael and Carla were sharing so beautifully that they're answering B, that it is part and parcel of our spiritual mission. Having money or sharing money, which part? Or tikkun olam, fixing the world, and for that we need money. Yeah? Is that okay? Cool. So let's take it to the next question. And this I'm more curious to hear your answer. What is the Jewish view on affluence? Encouraged, discouraged, neither, depends on something. David, what do you say about affluence?
That depends on, it depends on how you get affluent.
How you get it or how you use it or both?
Yeah, both.
Both. Okay, cool. So David here in person, David is answering C. Ken, it sounded like you wanted to add something?
I reminds me of a joke about it. How I priest it. I would or Greek get it. Pilot goes right through it. I don't get it. So why do you go through it? He said, well,
You participate?
they're texting, they're playing, they're doing this and that. When the pilot takes off, everyone's talking to God.
Very good.
It gets too easy. We might forget our origins. We might forget where it's coming from.
Oh.
And it all comes from God.
And we forget that when we have too much.
Yeah.
Okay. Who agrees with Ken on that one? So are we switching our answers around?
No, I like the humble. I mean, excuse me, that it depends on, because another part of, I think, the picture is partial with what he's saying, which is you need to be humble about where it comes from.
Right. So I guess so it does depend on what you're using it or how you're receiving it and how you're accepting it, with humility or with arrogance. So I would be curious to see if you would agree with texts of the Torah that seem to be saying, before we get to the Rebbe's wisdom on it, let's read the text and then you tell me what you think. Jessica, we're going to start with you. This is, straight out Torah. Text 1a on page 5. This is from chapter 32 of Deuteronomy, which is actually known as a song that Moshe sang on the last day of his life. It's a lot of rebuke. In his rebuke, look at the words that he says. Go ahead. So the word Yeshurun is actually another name given to the Jewish people. It's not as well known, but Yeshurun is referring to the people of Israel. So go ahead.
Yeshurun was fat and kicked, rebelled. You grew fat that can return. Israel forsook the God who made them and spurned the rock of their salvation.
So if we were to stop here, the text is saying, you grew fat, which is talking about satiation, money, feeling well taken care of. And what happened? You rebelled. You grew fat and you forsook God, similar to what Ken was just saying. Okay, let's take now some wisdom from Solomon on text 1b. Jessica, you could continue with the next text as well.
Poor person speaks with supplications. A rich person replies with impudence.
That's the whole text. How do you understand that?
I know what impudence.
How do we define? Asking for it.
Impudence, I don't know.
Let's define it. Define. Say it again, Carla.
Ignore? Is there arrogance?
Arrogance. Arrogance. Yes. It's a noun from the Oxford Dictionary that says his arrogance and impudence had offended men. So arrogance. Let's go with that. So a rich person, how does he reply? With arrogance.
Right.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that wealth, it has many benefits, but when we have excessive wealth, it could actually distract us from our spiritual pursuits, and it could actually lead to feeling of greed, indulgence, self-absorption, deprioritizing God, And then it could all, that was really from text 1 where we rebel against God. And then from the second text that Jessica just read, it could lead also to arrogance, an inflated feeling of self-importance and disrespect for others, like the poor person, and then the rich person is responding all arrogantly. So historically, many Jews were wary of material success. They felt that if we become wealthy or too wealthy, we're going to forget God. We're going to be all self-absorbed in ourselves, and we're going to forget the Torah. Could people agree with that? That it's possible? Okay. Does anyone disagree?
I think we have to go back to the original intent that in the
Oh, yeah.
garden, everything was there, everything was available, there was abundance, there was flourishing. And I think when we have limitations, a thought of limitations and scarcity, that I have to get mine because, and then other people won't get theirs, I think then we become more greedy. But if we realize it all comes from God and that it's a gift and there's enough, otherwise what happens is it starts to become number one in our lives and an idolatry. So that's where the arrogance and impudence and all those things. But I think if we recognize that it's God that has given the gifts and he wants us to have all good things, then I think it's great to be wealthy.
Right. And I would agree, but for the majority of people that maybe would lack that recognition, it's easy to forget God. It's easy to see how Moshe and Solomon were rebuking people that have excessive wealth. So, and Lynn, to your point, the Rebbe's position on wealth was actually just exactly what many of us were answering in text in the exercise 1 we just had, which was the Rebbe was all for wealth. And there's an incredible story where the Rebbe was actually paying a Shiva visit. This is in the late 50s, 1959, I think. He was paying a Shiva visit to another Hasidic Rebbe that lived in Brooklyn at the time. And they got into a conversation. The Rebbe came to visit someone who was known as the Kopschnitzer Rebbe. I'm not going to ask you to pronounce that or to spell it, but his name was Rabbi Avram Yeshua Heschel. And he was a great Rebbe for his Hasidic court. And in the course of the conversation, they were discussing the need for adequate funding to allow for the flourishing Torah institutions for Jews that were coming over from Europe, to make sure that we are ready and we have the infrastructure in place, and we need the funds to be able to fund it. So in the course of the conversation, the Rebbe was rooting or voting that the Jewish people should be wealthy. And the other Rebbe was like, we can't handle the test. So let's see it inside. David, you want to read text number 2? This is on page 6. So this is the Rebbe talking, and you'll see the other Rebbe, the Kopschnitzer Rebbe, answering.
The Rebbe, Jewish individuals need to secure financial security, and that is an important, positive, and appropriate goal in and of itself, regardless of the additional imperative to fund Torah institutions in specific locations. Financial success enables Jews to live comfortably and expansively, and that will also enable them to broaden their perspectives. For our sages taught that a beautiful home expands one's mind, and they meant that in the most literal sense. If only all Jewish people would be wealthy.
Continue.
And I can't pronounce.
Yeah, the Kopschnitzer Rebbe. Yeah, that's the other.
Yes. If wealth is a challenge, I fear the test that it poses. The Rebbe, poverty is equally a challenge. If there must be a challenge, the test of wealth is preferable over that of poverty. God will certainly help us successfully withstand the challenge.
Amazing. So the Rebbe definitely was rooting for wealth over here. Interestingly, after this part of the conversation turned to other things and forward discussion. But before the Rebbe left that Shiva visit, he circled back to that conversation and he says, and I just want to quote it, he said, I'd like for you to agree with me that the Jewish people, we should be blessed with wealth. We should be blessed with the test of wealth. And the other Rebbe, the Kopshnitzer Rebbe, understood that something, more spiritual was happening here, and he wholeheartedly agreed. He took the Rebbe's side, that we should be wealthy. And as the Rebbe explained, wealth is a test, but poverty also poses a test, as David just said. So does one continue to trust in God and believe in his infinite goodness and kindness, even in the face of financial difficulty? That's up to us. So it could be a test, but the Rebbe adamantly insisted that between the test of poverty and the test of wealth, if you're going to have a test, it should be the test of wealth. He didn't shy away from financial success. As we were saying before, that it's debatable because if you don't recognize, as Lynn was saying, the God and the hand of God in it, it could be easy to forget. And yet the Rebbe fully embraced the blessing of wealth, seeing it as a divine blessing that everyone could have and that we should pursue it. Jessica, we had a question?
I was just thinking about the stress of not having it now.
Right.
And how that can take us away from
Absolutely. Right, for sure.
Familial.
Yep, all of it. Yep. Yes, Ken.
There were times when life was more difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and working, studying, everything else was much more of a challenge than when there's some money in the bank, you got food on the table, and mortgage is paid, everything is going reasonably well. You're juggling.
So you're saying poverty is a bigger test?
Poverty is a bigger test because it's just so hard to learn, to study, to look at somebody else's problems in a kind way when you're struggling to figure it all out.
So I wish we would have had a wealthy person here to argue and to say that wealth is a big test as well, because some of us we can or can't relate, but there's people that are wealthy, and it's so hard for them to acknowledge that it's coming from God when they seal the deal on a tremendous business deal, and or all their money is coming from retail on Shabbat and they're told they have to close. There's a lot of tests that come with wealth also. And the Rebbe was rooting for the test of wealth over the test of poverty, but not to take away that poverty is not a test, because of course it is. And the Kopshnitzer Rebbe was saying that's easier of the two tests. And the Rebbe was saying wealth should be what we should go for. So the Rebbe was rooting for it all the way. I want to show you a video that the person it's going to be the Rebbe speaking at a remarkable, miraculous evening where the Rebbe basically at a Purim Farbring, and Purim is always lighthearted, joyous, merry, and the Rebbe says, whoever's ready to take upon themselves the test of wealth, raise your right hand. And if you were there, would you raise your hand? So only a handful of people raised their hand. People felt the chutzpah. Well, because again, that was the normal thing. We don't need the wealth. It's going to come with hardships. It's going to come with tests. It's going to come with so much other things that we'd rather just not have any of it. And the Rebbe was saying, who's ready to be wealthy? And a handful of people raised their right hand. Those people became millionaires. Now, I'm friends with the grandson of one of them who is going to speak himself. He ends the video by saying, I make a living. But what he means by saying I make a living is that he passed away since, but he was a multi-millionaire. And he started with nothing, but he started with his right hand. And the Rebbe rooted for him. So I just want to show you that video. So we did the exercise.
We'll start with Purim 1955, when the Rebbe spoke about the test of wealth. and then made an incredible offer.
Der Nisoyen von Aschiris ist sehr schwerer Nisoyen. Und deswegen, als alle Juden gesucht geworden sollen, alle werden gewinnen. In Amerika ist Minig, jede Sache stellt nach Wut als Abstimmung. Die was eine Maske im Mund nehmen als hier, der Ewigste soll sie geben, Aschire ist der Floge. Und sie hat nicht der Haravani, was sie und der darf willkommen haben. Mit dem Jetzer Horror soll sie nicht Machschel sein, soll nur heben die rechte Hand der Leberschollen.
We were sitting by a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe said that anyone who wants to become wealthy, raise your hands. Now, who has the audacity that I should ask the Rebbe about Gashmias? The Rebbe is for Ruchnistik, so most of the people wouldn't have the audacity to raise their hand.
Reb Shmuel Isaac Popak was said to have raised his hand, a fact that he would never confirm or deny, although he always told the story.
6 or 7 people raised their hands, and they all became millionaires. Subsequently, I asked the Rebbe for a broche. I had no parnosa at all, and the Rebbe told me I should go into real estate, which I did. And I told the Rebbe I had no money. The Rebbe says, you don't need money to go into real estate. So through certain maneuvering, we were able to buy 2 houses without any cash. That started us off in the real estate business, and thank God we make a living.
Question that I want to pose is, why would a Jewish spiritual leader be advocating for affluence? Obviously, we want money. And like Jessica and Ken were saying, there's a test with not having it. But a Jewish leader, his main thing is Torah. His main thing is that we're involved in synagogue life, in spiritual pursuits and growth. Why would he be advocating wealth? It's kind of just a segue into getting the Rebbe's glimpse of the Rebbe's wisdom about financial success and about wealth and about money and about business and about retirement. So that's where we're going to get into now. Any questions before we continue?
Well, I was just gonna say, look at all the hospitals and educational institutions. Now we're worrying about those, but just, libraries, big things that comes with people that have an overflow and recognize the blessing and the responsibility that comes with it. And so I think if it, like what some of the people have said, to use it properly, then it's a fantastic tool.
Very true. Thank you, Lynn. So let's zoom out a little, and to appreciate the Rebbe's stance and position on wealth, let's get a bit more of a broader perspective on the Rebbe's perspective on work in general. Society tends to view work as a necessary evil. We need to work in order to sustain ourselves, put a roof over our heads, to support our families, of course. Even though we have things that we want to be doing, important things in our lives, in our own aspirations, but we have to work in order to make a living. Even those that enjoy their jobs and enjoy going to work, enjoy what they're doing, they're motivated to be doing what they're doing largely because of they need to make a living. The Rebbe, however, looked at work through an entirely different angle. For the Rebbe, every pursuit in one's life is purposeful, including work, including one's career. Financial success and work are more than just a necessary means to obtaining a livelihood, to support our family, to put a roof over our head. In the Rebbe's view, work and financial success have inherent value and purpose in itself. It's not just to be able to make a living. It's not a means to an end. It's itself inherently valuable. And that's irrespective of a person's line of work. They could be doctor and a lawyer, or they could be working as a cleaner or anything else. And yet there's value in what they're doing, not because of the paycheck that it brings and that it's able to support their family, but because of it in itself and what they're doing. Why? Because in the Rebbe's view, and this is based on a midrash that if you've come to any of our classes, you've heard us talk about this. This is like one of the foundational, if not, just a second, if not the foundational thing of teaching from the Torah, is that the ultimate purpose of existence is to make this world habitable, a home for God, to bring heaven onto earth. Or to, the words I like to use is to make physical reality transparent of its inner divine truth. There's an inner divinity that's happening here, but we can't always see it. We want it to be transparent, and that's our job, to make this world a reflection of godliness, to make divinity home in this world. How can we affect that? The greatest way to affect it is exactly as Michael was saying when he answered B before, is to be fully engaged in world. The more you are involved in world, and yet remaining and retaining your status as Jewish or Torah observant, connected with something higher, and yet involved in this world, you're opening the world to a deeper divine mission. In Hebrew, the term is dira b'tachtonim, to make this world a home for God, that God should feel at home in this world. And it doesn't mean in the synagogue life, it means in the real world. It means in the business, in the office, on the streets. With our achievements, even in there, and especially there, we see godliness. And the Rebbe would point it out from proving it in the quantity. We know that a week has 6 days. That what are we supposed to be doing? 6 days you shall work, the Torah says. And on the 7th day you shall rest. So the way God set up the system of the week is that the majority of time we're involved in work. If that was just a necessary evil or just a means to supporting ourselves, why would God make that the majority of our time? Because truthfully, the main purpose of why we are here is to be able to be involved in work. And while there, making it a home habitable for God. So we see that in our day. A minority of our day is involved in prayer and saying the Shema and putting on tefillin. The majority of our day is out there in the world, in the workspace. And the same is with our week. And the same is also with our, what's known in Hebrew as Shemitah, which is the sabbatical year, where the Torah says 6 years you shall work, and the 7th year shall be a sabbatical, be involved in more spiritual pursuits. But what we see from that is the majority of our time is actually involved in work, because it's specifically in the workspace and in mundane life where we have the opportunity to bring divinity there. Because God's hope is not for divine to remain in the synagogue. It's to bring divinity to the work, bring divinity to the world. So let's just see that on the screen. Society's view as work is a necessary evil. It's motivated by need, meaning we need to work in order to support our family. The Rebbe's view is every part of life is purposeful. So work and financial success have purpose and have inherent value in itself. Let's see, Elizabeth, would you like to read? We're going to be now, let's see the Rebbe saying this in 1990 in the Rebbe's own words. This is on page 8, text number 3.
end is the Torah itself established that the majority of the Jewish individuals' life could be devoted to material pursuits, in which there is no distinction between the Jew and anyone else. The explanation is that the purpose of God created the world is that God desired that we practically turn this material world with all its corporate reality and material coarseness into a dwelling for God Himself, through serving God in this world in accordance with the Torah that He gave us. To achieve that, the majority and the main thrust of our daily service of God is not strictly spiritual activities. After all, our spiritual activities are comparable to the divine service performed by souls before they enter the world and after they return to heaven. Rather, we spend most of our time specifically on interaction with materiality. Therefore, the Torah emphasizes, for 6 years you shall sow your field, etc. The idea is to bring sanctity and divinity down into our fields, the coarse realm of materiality, so as to turn our material and corporeal world for God.
Awesome. So to summarize this, the Rebbe maintained that work is not just a necessary evil to obtain a livelihood or to sustain a more elevated achievements, but rather it has inherent value and purpose in itself. God created the world in a way that the majority of our time is spent, and the majority of our life is spent working, engaged in society, because the ultimate goal is for us to be able to live spiritual life, a spiritually guided life while in the workplace, to be ethical, holy, and a spiritual person governed by the Torah and with honesty and ethics and values, but to do that not in the synagogue, to do that in the workplace, and to be a shining role model for the people that you come across, for them to learn what it means to be a person with spiritual values while in the workplace. You could be that role model when you're at work. When you're at synagogue, you're not going to be that role model because everyone is with that. But when you go to the workplace and not everyone has that, you become that role model. You could only do that when you're in the workspace. Yes, Ken.
I don't know where it came from, but someone said when you go to heaven, the first thing God asks is, "How did you perform in
Conduct
business?"
business. That's right. It's one of the first questions.
So
yeah, that's right.
You have to do that in life.
Very true.
And our example makes big changes on other people.
That's right. And by example, exactly, by being a role model. So that's an incredible task for us to be able to do that only happens when you're out there involved in the world, not on the mountains of Tibet or Colorado. Yes.
A lot of people don't know that during the year of slavery in the United States, if you were Jewish, and the seventh year, you had to let your slaves go. They were free.
I did not know that.
After 6 years.
Yeah.
And the seventh year, they were.
Wow. Just like it says in the Torah. Wow. Interesting. Okay. Thank you, Ken. I had no idea. So if you look on page 9, we're going to go through 3 different points over here, but the spiritual purpose of a career. So the first point we're bringing out over here, and I think I could put this up on the screen as well, is bringing holiness and Torah values into the mundane workplace. That is the ultimate purpose of creation. Okay. The purpose of existence to bring holiness into the mundane. Let's continue with another point. When you're in the workplace, you have the opportunity to affect people and inspire them, for them to learn from you as a role model, but also it gives you an opportunity to be a teacher. Wherever you are, and wherever they are on their spiritual journey, when you go to work, inevitably, you will meet people in their field or profession, and you would be able to have a positive influence on them that they wouldn't have asked your advice on something if you weren't in the workplace with them, if you weren't a colleague. But because you gained the respect of being a colleague, and I'm looking, we have a doctor in the crowd, and from whatever, or a teacher, wherever you are in your workplace, you have an opportunity to affect people. And actually look at the words of one of the great Chabad Rebbes, the fourth Chabad Rebbe. He quotes something to a simple person that was involved in the market, and he said, "I am jealous of you," which is such a remarkable thing. Let's continue this way. Ken, you want to read text number 4? It's on page 10.
My grandfather, Rabbi Shmuel of Novato, and close follower named Louis Abler, who in terms of scholarship and aptitude was a simple fellow. One of his attracted audiences was my grandfather, he was told, "Again, Hallelujah, I am here." Travel to various fairs where you meet many people. In the middle of business transaction, you get into a spirited discussion or Torah insight, something inspirational you recall from the public and Yaakov Cloud. The retells the story and ethical teachings from the Talmud. When you do that, you arouse the other person's interest in studying Torah. This activity causes much joy on high. God rewards such trade with the blessing of children, health, and such.
Beautiful.
The larger the fair, the more work there is, and the greater is the livelihood earned.
Amazing. So while you're at the workplace, you can have an influence on other people around you. And what I just want to show you a video. We're going to even take it up a notch based on the Rebbe's guidance, that's the spiritual purpose of why you're even there. So the spiritual purpose of a career, what we said before, was bringing holiness to the work environment is the purpose of creation, not to keep it in the synagogue, but rather to be involved in the world. Now another point that we're going to be bringing out is, if you look on page 11, the workplace affords us unique opportunities to inspire others to be better people, to be better Jews, to be better themselves, that because you're there, you can have that effect on them. So I just want to show you this beautiful video that Jen put together, the Jewish Educational Media. One is of a guy named Rappaport, who in the 80s was one of the big members at IBM. And he was thinking of leaving his position to be a shaliach. Shaliach means to be a Chabad representative. And the Rebbe was saying, you're a shliach at IBM. That's where you're needed. That's your purpose, to have an effect on the people and inspire them there. And another is going to be a Mayor Zeiler, who was a traveler to Antwerp for the Diamond District, and we'll just see some stories. So the superior purpose of career, we said number 1, and now we can make a difference.
I just started a new job in IBM, and Hey Tavis comes along, and the Rebbe says on that day that everybody should be like a shliach. I didn't know, what did the Rebbe mean, everybody should be a shliach? Maybe he means that I gotta quit my job and like stop becoming a campus shliach or something like that. I wrote into the Rebbe, should I give up my job for IBM? What is it that the Rebbe wants? And the Rebbe like underlines it on the answer, and with a big, just one word answer, Lama. Why do you have to give up your job in IBM? I want you to stay in those things and be my shliach.
Madische מצד גבר כנונו, als wo kommt und was Ramai mit dem Matzewer kommt, soll dorten Schmäh von dem Mäbischten, soll dorten machen, dass in ein Leben soll sein Schake, bis wir Schachanti besechen, ordentlich, in seine eigene Dalle Dame ist in der noch gleich, al besser besser mit Bachut.
And that was what I ended up doing. I stayed in IBM. I had a very, very matzliachtik career.
So if you would give a warm round of applause for Mr. Moshe Rappaport from IBM.
But I felt all the time that I was doing shlichus. In other words, I would make speeches all over the world.
Your desktop or on your wall, or you're going to be wearing and so on, that are AI driven. But the real...
All through my career, I would write to the Rebbe what was going on, what I was
They're going to be
doing.
secure. How are we going to manage the access control?
Top people, CEOs, politicians, famous journalists from all over the world came to find out what IBM was doing in research. And I get to meet all these people with my yarmulke, with my beard, and so on and so forth. And Jewish people came over to me. And I was actually a shliach in that sense.
My offices center in Hong Kong should be completely.
You certainly know that now Hong Kong is a visiting place for many Jews from several countries. And then you can influence that during their visit in Hong Kong, when they are returning to their homes, they will bring with them additional Yerushalayim. And that will be your business also.
אני במקצועי נייבל ארכיטקט, יש לי מפעל בארץ גדול, ובזכות ברכתו מלפני שנתיים במכתב שכבודו כתב לי, שקיבלתי ממנו, קיבלנו עבודה גדולה מאוד, $2 מיליון, בצבא ארצות הברית, חודש אחרי המכתב. חודש אחרי קבלת המכתב קיבלנו את העבודה הכי גדולה בחיינו מהצבא האמריקאי.
זו התחלה גדולה, ועד יש בכך יכול לעשות כפליים.
אני מקווה, אני משתדל, והרבה עובדים שלי שלא היו יראי שמיים, כשזה קרה, חזרו בתשובה. וזה הודות לכבוד הרב.
עדיין הולך להוסיף עוד יותר בירושלים שלו, כאילו שלבחור יילו ויעשו כליך על כל פנים החצי עמו.
The major exhibition that we exhibited at was in Brussels. Was a major upholstery fabric international exhibition. Part of our display was knowing that if a Jew came in there, he knew he would get caught in me asking him if he could put on film. The exhibition is going to be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Rosh Hashanah was coming up Monday night. To come in for one half a day on Monday exhibition, it's a little bit crazy. On the other hand, I knew the Rebbe wanted we should always be at the exhibition, so we're going. Rabbi Chadakov let me know that the Rebbe suggested that we put up a sign at the beginning of the show that due to the Sabbath we're going to be closed at Friday 2:30. So the customers, they'll know in the beginning of the show they should come into you right away. At about 1:30, suddenly I see a gentleman walking up and down past our stand where there's thousands of people walking. But I see he keeps looking at the sign and he's asking, tell me, what is this closing the Sabbath? It's an international exhibition. What's this closing Rosh Hashanah? I said, where are you from, sir? He says, Ich bin a Polische. So I saw dealing with a Jew. I said, how about putting on film? He looks at me like I went crazy. He said, film? Who believes in all of this? I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything. He says, Ich bin durchgegangen Hitler. I went through Hitler. I never put on film, he says. I said, my friend, I understand you 100%. Once in your lifetime, you didn't have a bar mitzvah, you said. You'll be able to say, you're right, God wasn't right to you, and you had a bar mitzvah. He took off his jacket, and we put him on film. The minute he said Shema Yisrael, he broke down and started crying. He says, Ich kenn nicht. He was holding us out, Ich kenn nicht. And he sat down, and he didn't know what to do, how to thank us. You can imagine how we felt. Business, we didn't do that much, but we knew what we came for, and we knew we were going to have a good year.
So the workplace, once again, affords us the opportunity to be able to be in a position to inspire people to be better and to be their best selves. Another point that we want to make, that again, that the Rebbe advocated to be involved in the work life, in the workspace, is for most people, why do we work, as we said before, is to make a living. Why do we make a living? To be able to provide for our families, to have a roof on our heads. We're going to now jump into a text from the Tanya, which is from the first Chabad Rebbe, and he gives an entirely different perspective. And just to just bring one point out, and as we read it together, our spiritual and our mundane life, according to this text, we're going to argue that those are intertwined. You're no more Jewish in a synagogue than you are in the workplace. The workplace is as important for you to be as you are in the synagogue, because you could be godly in this in the workplace. And I want you to see the text for yourself. Cheryl, did you read it? I don't think so, right? All right, so let's read text 5. I'm just going to tell you the first 4 words. I just want to translate it properly. It says that there's a beautiful verse from Samuel where it says, some of you are maybe familiar with the Hebrew, Mi kamcha Yisrael. Does anyone know the end of that sentence? Go echad ba'aretz, which means who is like your people Israel. What type of people? One nation on earth. So that verse is where the Tanya is going to be emphasizing. One in Hebrew is the word echad. Echad, is anyone familiar with the word echad? Where do we say it in our prayers? In the Shema. We say God is one. So the oneness of God over here is echad ba'aretz. The oneness of God is going to be revealed in the earth, in the workplace, in the mundane areas of life. That's where you could see echad, the oneness of God. Let's see it inside, Cheryl. You want to read that text? 5 on page 12, yeah.
Who is like your people Israel, one unique nation on earth? The implication is that even while they engage in mundane matters on earth, they do not separate themselves from the true one. It is therefore appropriate that we do not perform all of our mundane achievements for materialists, but rather in order to bring sustenance to other souls, speak of godliness, and supply them with that which they lack, out of gratuitous kindness for them. In doing so, we resemble our Creator, the one God, for God performs 3 kindness at all times. And his kindness is true, not for recompense, in that he animates the universe and all its contents every single moment.
I love that last paragraph. In doing so, we resemble God. By being in the workplace, it affords you the ability to have so that you can give. That's what God does. Right now, God just gave you a breath. Right now, God has given you eyesight and vision and hearing and the ability to be kind and to be loving, the ability to discern. Say again? Exactly. So we get to mirror God and also be giving. And giving, how do we give? The more you have, the more you can give. So therefore, the Rebbe was a huge advocate of being in the workplace and to be wealthy, because then it gives you the ability to give more and to be more godly in that way. God gives, you can give also. And the more you have, the more you can give. So in this perspective, the philosophy over here is they're not separate. The spiritual and the mundane, the money you have is part of your purpose to be able to give. And by giving, you're godly. That's all part of one. They're all intertwined. When we say the Shema in the morning, traditionally, what do we do, Ken, when we sing the Shema? Very good. We cover our eyes. Because when we're saying the Shema, we're supposed to have a meditation that everything is connected with one, with one God. So therefore, we open our eyes and we go out to work. We see the world. What are we seeing? We're seeing how everything is connected with that Echad. Everything is connected with God. So that we can avoid any distractions and intensify our meditation by saying the Shema, the 6 words of the Shema, that God that is in the heavens is God that is one in the world. That nothing is separate. Spiritual and mundane are not separate worlds. That spiritual is intertwined with mundane. That our money is intertwined with giving. And in that way, we're godly. Yeah. And then we're supposed to open our eyes and see the world in that new reality. So we did already the second one. The workplace affords us unique opportunities. Okay, so now what we're saying now, your job is to give. Part of your purpose here is how the spiritual and mundane come together. through your giving, they actually become one. You worked hard for that money with your sweat and with your tears. And by giving, not all of it, but some of it, you're being godly. That God gives and you give. So according to that way, you make a living in order to have the means to give others, and by doing that, emulating God, who does the same. Amazing. And the Rebbe applied the idea that you earn money not just to be able to afford your lifestyle. You earn money, part of it is also to be able to give. There is 10% that we give. The Rebbe would actually tell some people that were stuck in a hard financial, narrow area, the Rebbe would say to give even more than 10%. Because in the Rebbe's worldview, the wisdom the Rebbe would give is it's all intertwined. You want to make a bigger blessing. You want God to give you more. You give more, you'll be more godly, and God will be able to channel more blessings in. We'll get back to that point in a little bit. But let's see text number 6 now on page 13. The Rebbe's answering to someone. And in 1959, this was a small area in Israel. It's much more built up. It's called Kfar Chabad. And it was founded in the early 50s by immigrants, by Russian immigrants that were farmers. And they built up this area called Kfar Chabad. Has anyone been to Kfar Chabad? On our JLI trip, one of the options was to go to Kfar Chabad. We didn't go on our trip, but many people did. So there was a farmer. His name was Yecheskel Springer. And he had a turkey farm, wild turkeys, and he had a farm for them. And he had an opportunity that would substantially expand and increase his business. He wasn't sure. His goal was to be finished with his job, to make enough to earn a living, to be able to spend more time studying. That was his hope. So when he got an opportunity to expand his business, which would mean more time involved in the business, he was very reluctant. So he wrote to the Rebbe, should I accept? Should I expand the business and the opportunity that arose? Or should I avoid it because I'm making a decent living and I could spend more time studying, more time in spiritual pursuits? And just look at the Rebbe's response to it. I love the response. Shira, do you want to read it on page 13? Yeah.
He questioned whether it is appropriate for you to desire to research. That question has already been answered. 10% of one's earnings must be given to charity, and ideally for those who wish to step beyond the basic requirement and enhance their observance, 20%. In fact, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Novato explains that it's appropriate to give even more than that. This is especially relevant now that the institutions that require our charitable support require expansion, and therefore their financial needs are constantly growing as well. Consequently, charity is required, and that demands greater income.
So the Rebbe is telling him, more is needed of you, so work, expand your business, and then you'll be able to give more. Pretty cool. I want to show you this amazing video by someone by the name of David Mintz, who was the founder and the CEO of Tefuti. Has anyone heard of Tefuti? Yeah, like back in the early 80s, Tefuti was like the main soy ice cream. It was the only one at the time. And he was developing it, and the Rebbe gave him advice on how to do it. If you go to Harvest Market or Scotty's Market, go to the freezer aisle, you'll find Tefuti. Tefuti cuties, this little like ice cream cakes. So anyway, the founder and the owner of Tefuti asked the Rebbe for advice on to sell it. And look at the Rebbe's response to it.
Ja,
also von der Seite, sie drücken mir. Wir hatten einen so verkaufen.
was verkaufen die Retail Stores im ganzen Geschäft?
Geschäft, ja. Weil es ist erst, der Umstände sind nicht so geht. Und die Sache ist so, sie sagen, die Company, die Menschen von der Seite sagen, es kann wachsen, ob andere Menschen kommen rein mit der Sache, ihr Geld.
Was da eine gute Sache, weil das sie auch geben
Nee,
andere.
wo nicht. Sie wusste, Rebbe ist also...
Nee, mit dat manche ist eben, kommt ja zu einem Teamparkeben. Aber eben mit dem Geld, was sie bekommen, wird sie das investieren in ein Geschäft. Aber mit dat sein weiter aktiv mit dem Ewigste, dass der selber so geben sollte, so geben als Hausdocke. Und wie sich das hier gegeben, weil so geben die Menschen nicht hier auseinander.
So, der Rebbe hat also verhalten, eine Arbeit nach dem...
Ja, aber die Sessenteil muss als manche sein. Sie will Partie verkaufen. Macht nicht das, aber mit der Maya, sie so tegen die das, was sie bleiben bei, so die das verstärken und verbreiten.
So the third point of a spiritual purpose of a career, what we're saying here, is the greater our earnings, more we can give towards charitable causes. Like the Rebbe just told David Mintz, the world or I think the word was, God needs you to make more so you can give more. So you can't sell your business, you could sell part of it so that it gets invested in it, and you could expand it even more. Okay, so now that we know the Rebbe's perspective on work, what about retirement? Most of us work with or we even build our whole career with the plan of retirement. And we dream about it. So what would you consider the optimal age of retirement is? Age 15? No, now it's a thing. It's like people, it's like a thing to retire by 30. It's like a thing. It's like making enough money and you're done by 30. Like there's all these like people out there that are saying invest in Bitcoin and you'll retire by 30. Millennials, right? Gen Z, millennials. As of 2021, the average age for a man to retire was 65, and for a woman, the average age is 62. That's the average.
In the US?
Yeah, I think so. That's a good question, actually. I don't know. I'm assuming that's in the US. That's from a Forbes article. I'm assuming the US, but I'm not sure. So from a Jewish perspective, if you think of it, when you retire, you have more time to come to Kol. The rabbi asks you to come to Minyan, you're available. More time to study, more time to teach, more time to pray. It looks like the right thing. But you'll learn now that the Rebbe's opinion was basically there's no such thing as retirement. Keep working. Really at any age. See that inside. You see the Rebbe.
Insgesamt bin ich denke, man soll es retiren, soll ich habe ich soll retiren von der Business.
Das hat ich mir
aber wie nennt man vorher?
Das wir lernen.
Okay,
das haben wir nur.
Ich will gerade so beten, für gesunde Frau von der
Ja, soll ich sagen, wenn die gesund haben, gesunde Kinder und haben gesunde Psyche, so haben wir schon viel besser. Und deswegen retire. Wenn wir hier waren, dann geht das gleich gesund. Since what we do to try, you can be active now also. The retirement is only good for old people, as young and young person. But 220, how much money you need? 220, you have 45 years. It can be good to the best thing for you and Geschäften, that you can certainly continue it, not have to think even about retiring. You must gain much more money to give much more tzedakah, and to do so in good mood and good health together with your family.
And things are moving along well, and I'm not going to retire.
Yeah, thank you. Forget about.
The Rebbe was critical of retirement because he saw work and our career as our means of fulfilling our life's purpose. And then we're in a position to be able to be a role model to others, to be able to give, to be able to fulfill our life's purpose. By what right can you put that on the side if that's where your life purpose is? It's not about the money is not there just to support your family. It's in order to be able to have an influence on the people you come across. And it's in order to be able to give more charity. And it's in order to bring godliness to the work environment. So in this non-dualistic approach, where the spiritual and the mundane, they're all intertwined, which means in the workplace, that's where our life's purpose and mission is. The Rebbe's perspective now, if you look at it from the reverse, to succeed in your career, it's by being more involved in your spiritual life also. Take time from your day and designate time for Torah study. To make sure that your faith is healthy, so that when things go bad or things are worrisome and you feel anxious, to know that there's God there with you. To be able to take the time and say, as important as my career is, and that's part of my life's purpose and mission, you don't lose track of the source of it all, which is from Hashem, which is from God. And if that's the case, then when it comes a day like Shabbat, you realize where your priority is. So this would take us to just a beautiful section. Title of this section of the lesson is Spiritual Secrets to Material Success. I love that title. That really resonated with me. We look at our work as an extension of our spiritual life. And we see them all as intertwined. So where is the true success coming from? It's going to come from Hashem, God. And therefore, let's just put it up on the screen as well. So we did the review on retirement. So the spiritual secret to material success, having faith in God's blessing, causes them to be revealed. Our job is to work, but at the same time to know that the source of it all is coming from Hashem. And therefore faith, which in Hebrew is called emunah, is going to be a center of all of this. And the more you harness or you anchor your emunah, your faith, the greater success you will be able to see. It's actually a conduit for blessings, according to the Rebbe's perspective. So let's see this from a text on page 16. In God we trust. This is from the Rebbe in 1959, the Rebbe responding to a letter. Vivian, do you want to read?
So I received your letter in which you write about your anxiety in regard to the question of Novato. You surely know how often our sages have impressed on us the importance of trust and confidence in God, in order that we realize that all difficulties encountered in life are only trials and tests of a pressing nature. To be sure, the question of Novato is one of the most difficult tests. Nevertheless, God does not subject one to a greater test than he can withstand. As our rabbis expressed it, according to the camel, so its load. So is its load. The very trust in God is a vessel and channel to receive God's blessings, apart from the fact that such confidence is good for one's health and disposition, and therefore is also a natural means to the desired end.
Amazing. So over here is going to be one point that Vivian just read so nicely, that spiritual investment is helpful for our financial success, for all areas of our life, including our financial success. Therefore, the Rebbe encouraged people to have faith, explaining that our emunah, our faith in God, brings additional blessings. This strengthening our faith will in itself bring more blessings, and that's the catalyst for those blessings. Number two, an area that the Rebbe would encourage is about Shabbat. That as much as our business needs our attention, and if it's retail, Saturday is the most important day for business, yet the Rebbe would encourage people to realize if the source of it all is coming from Hashem, and Hashem said, don't work on Shabbat, your success will come without having to work on Shabbat. Why be open on Shabbat and have success when you don't have to be open on Shabbat and have more success? That was the Rebbe's view on it. And we'll show you a story, an incredible story. But just even here in the community, I was speaking to a lovely Israeli by the name of Tal. He was just telling me this a few months ago. He told me that he's a locksmith. If you need a locksmith, this guy is the best. He will give you a discount if you say Chabad. And he was not observant. And Shabbat was the busiest day for him. He actually had friends that were closed on Shabbat, and they were from the East Bay, so he would get a lot of their calls. So it was very lucrative for him to be open on Shabbat, because that's when most people are on vacation, driving, and they get locked out of their cars and whatever else. People are doing their home things, and they need a locksmith. But he decided, I think a couple of years ago, he's being closed on Shabbat, and he was so worried. And at the end of the year, he spoke with his accountant, and he doubled his income while being closed on Shabbat, on his busiest day. Explain that. So a person, if we have the faith that our success, that God wants us to be well, and our success is coming from Hashem, you could work on Shabbat, but Hashem will maybe have another way of why you have to spend that money on something that you didn't even want to, whether it's on a speeding ticket or whether it's on a health crisis, God forbid. Hashem is saying, close on Shabbat, and I'll make sure the wealth is going to be there for you. It doesn't make sense logically, and that's where there's a spiritual investment that has to be at play. And the Rebbe would advocate to people, invest in your spiritual life, and you will see financial success, which is just a wild idea. Let's see that on page 17 now. Let's see, Carla, do you want to read? Sure. Making our round. On page, text number 8.
Sense thinking. It is clear to the unbiased mind, and even to plain common sense, the Almighty, who is the giver of Torah and mitzvot, is also the creator and master of the world, whose benevolent providence extends to everyone individually. It is also equally obvious that no lasting good can come from breaking God's laws, especially such a fundamental law as Shabbat observance. For the important thing is not how much money a person earns, but that he should be able to spend it in good health and on happy things, which is entirely in the hands of God. In view of the above, it is quite clear that what your attitude of the businessman in question should be, even if there were no other immediate business proposition. For it is necessary, without delay, to give up kind of business that interferes with Shabbat observance, with the full confidence that he who feels and sustains 3 billion people and all living things will also be able to take care of the individual and his family and provide him with the source of parnoso, livelihood, which should not be in conflict with the will of God.
Awesome. So let's watch this video of a guy who was from LA and we decided to close on Shabbat. Let's see. Sacrifice at work. Okay.
I started a store, clothing store in downtown Los Angeles, 3,000 square feet store. I really seriously was seeing myself like, I want to close the store on Shabbos. I don't want to work on Shabbos. But it was difficult to think like this because most of the business you're doing on Shabbos. There was some Shabbos I used to sell $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on Shabbos. During the week, barely I can sell $100, $150. Now the contract, the lease I have, I was obligated 20 years lease. The owner, he warning me in the beginning, if you ever was thinking to leave this lease, I'm going to run after you to the rest of your life. I'm not going to let you go out from it. So I wrote to the Rebbe, told them, Rebbe, I decide to close my store on Shabbos. I would like to have a blessing. I should not get hurt. I'm getting a letter, and in the envelope I open, I see $18, and then it say, 1. מתחיל מקודם שקיעת החמה וגדול הזכות. 2. להפיץ את התורה מתוך שמחה. 3. לתת צדקה שמה, to give צדקה at the money what he gave me. The next day I say, I'm going to go to the landlord and I'm going to give him the list, and the landlord was not there. I came back to my store. There is a guy walking to my store. He wants to buy the store, he's telling me. So I told him, go to the landlord. He's telling me, I was with the landlord. I say, what the landlord told you? He say, you holding the list, אתה מחזיק את החוזה. He took a checkbook and he wrote me a nice check. Just can tell you, with this check I bought a house and I started manufacturing. And I remember going to the Rebbe, and on Sunday I told the Rebbe, I got a miracle with the store. The Rebbe was laughing and he went like this on my mouth, like, don't talk about this.
הרב, אנחנו השקענו שלושתנו בביזנס של לסגור בשבת. אנחנו צריכים ברכה והצלחה בביזנס.
בשביל השבת ויום טוב.
ויום טוב.
ושבת
ויום טוב סגור.
Теперь очень нужно соблюдать субботу. Так как это Бог указал, что Асерес Хадибис, когда он дал Торы, он начал с того, что каждый еврей до конца времен должен соблюдать субботу.
I started my practice on Nulatz Avenue, and things looked very bleak. It wasn't going anywhere. I remember having a friend. I happened to have mentioned to him that I was having some problems. This young man suggested that the Rebbe would be able to help me, and I made an appointment with the Rebbe. I started to tell him I wasn't doing well here in Brooklyn, and I was able to find a place in Bayside. I was going to be starting an office there. He says, do you work on Shabbos? And I said, yes, I do. And he says, now you're going to a new place. He says, you're moving. Perhaps you ought to think about not working on Shabbos. It became known that Dr. Walensky doesn't work on Saturday. And it was unheard of. Dr. Walensky goes to a shul. I was very successful financially, very successful. Even in the way I lived my life, I felt more satisfied, more at ease, very satisfied with being Jewish.
I fell from there. Okay, so we have the spiritual investment that we put in. We'll see a greater conduit for blessings in our financials, like the Israeli was saying about his store in LA. And it's an incredible thing that he closes on Shabbos and a miracle happens. And that's something that the Rebbe saw. Well, it was two sides of the same coin. The idea of your spiritual investment will enhance your success in your financial life. And another area was also to take time from your day and spend time studying Torah. And the Rebbe actually shared this. You'll see in 1991, we'll read the text together, to a group of business people, like the owner of Revlon. If you saw, he was a very successful person. And the Rebbe was saying, you want to see more financial success, take time from your day and study Torah. And it will open your mind to even greater blessings. Let's see that text inside. Michael, do you want to read? Page 19, perhaps 9.
A business person should dedicate a portion of their time each day to Torah study. Although this eats into the time that is usually dedicated to work, not only will the study not detract from their overall success, but to the contrary. Torah study clears and refines the mind to be able to make better business decisions with greater clarity and efficiency. It calms the spirit, leading to greater success in business, greater happiness in life. This phenomenon is expressed clearly in the Torah itself. If you go in my way and fulfill my commandments, I will provide rain in its optimal time. When we dedicate time for Torah study, we are guaranteed divine blessings for success in a way that is optimal without stress or worry.
Beautiful. Enough said on that. So let's continue. So we have time off for Torah. It clears the mind and calms the heart. Now, the next part is going to be championing charity. We'll go a little quick. While giving hurts, because we worked hard for that income, but it's a conduit for success. To tell you the Rebbe's theory on it, when we give, we're actually becoming partners with God. God says you want, and it's an incredible verse. I don't have it. I don't think we have it in the text. But God says, "Test me on this mitzvah, on charity. That the more you give, the more you'll get." Why? The logic is because when you give, you're becoming God's partner. Could you wish for a better business partner than God? And that's what's happening when you're giving. You become let's see the title over here. It's called the Divine Partner on text 10 on page 20. Ken, you'll get the last text over here. Okay, no problem. Jessica, you want to read? I don't think I have to turn to it. I'll read it. Right. Page 20. I hope that from now on, you will realize more fully and confidently that God is your partner in the business by virtue of the tzedakah, the charity stake in it. And of course, the larger the share of the tzedakah, the larger is the share of the partnership. So you can go boldly ahead on a broader front. I hope to hear good news from you. So you have God as a partner. The more you invest in your partner, the greater partnership he invests back in you. Let's see.
My business has been very bad. And I hope to God you can give me a brachas of my
You put a tzedakah in your business and
Yes.
arrange to have at least 10% given for the net income of the business to tzedakah, to charity.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, God Almighty bless you. Have good news. That's what goes in the tzedakah push in the business.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
אני דור 11 בישראל, אני פיתחתי נושא חדש שמאוד חשוב לי לשלמות המשפחה ולהצלחה של המשפחה. אני מבקש את ברכתך. ההמצאה היא המצאה מאוד חשובה ויחידה בעולם.
באיזה שטח?
בשטח האלקטרוניקה. אחסון של מידע מחשבים דרך הטלפון. זו ההמצאה היחידה בעולם.
ויהי בהצלחה רבה ובשורות טובות. צריך להבטיח להשם שתיתן צדקה, בצדקה 10% מהרווח הנקי. זה ברכה והצלחה. הצלחה רבה. $1 מייסטר. זן בדיוק, זן מייסטר.
זורקים בדיוק auf den Cent.
Nein, die Parkette, was Messi sagen, so sein nicht bedienst, auf Kopfhörer mit $1 mehr.
Doch mehr wie Meister.
Das ist
intuitive, but for the Rebbe, it was all part of the same thing. Your spiritual investment will enhance your mundane success. So what I would like to conclude with the last video for the evening, after all we've said, I want to go back to what we said originally. People that were looking for scholarship, for wisdom on Torah, depth and knowledge, it makes sense that they go to the Rebbe. Leadership, people in a leadership position wanted to learn about leadership, it made sense to go to the Rebbe. But the simple people that went to the Rebbe for business advice, why? What is it that the Rebbe had? So I want to, with a video, an interview of a lady who said that in private audience, her partner, her colleague asked the Rebbe this question. Why do they come to the Rebbe? And you'll hear the Rebbe's answer. Found it powerful. So we did that.
Rivka Blau is the daughter of Rabbi Mordechai Pinchas Teitz, a prominent rabbinic activist and chief rabbi of Elizabeth, New Jersey. In 1961, she was vice president of Yavne, one of the first Orthodox student organizations on American college campuses.
Our mission statement was that we wanted to promote Jewish learning and Jewish observance on campus, and that we wanted to, I don't remember the exact wording, but that we wanted to enable people who want to know more about their Jewishness to find out, but we knew we had to know more if we were going to be that kind of a presence on campus. It was essentially Jewish learning, Jewish observance, not to feel so alone. And that if people wanted to learn more, we would be available to help them. Those were pretty much that was the essence of the mission statement. And at that time we already had, I think, between 13 and 15 college groups involved. And we also had isolated students in different places. At Rutgers, we had 3 or 4 students. At the University of Pennsylvania, we had some students. Now, at that time, the Lubavitch Rebbe had a representative who would come to Columbia and who got friendly with the president of Yavne, Joel Levine. And this young man, his last name was Feller, told Joel and me, well, actually, he told Joel first, and then Joel told me, that he wanted to meet with two officers of Yavne and to talk to us about how we had gotten started and what we were doing. Our appointment was for 10 o'clock at night, so we came to 770 Eastern Parkway at 10 o'clock at night, and we were asked to come in to see the Rebbe at 12 o'clock. And he asked us many detailed questions about how we had started, how we had found each other, what we were finding on campus, what were the problems, what were the possibilities, what opportunity was there for people who were interested in finding more about their Jewishness, how could we reach them, what do we find worked well, what we found did not work. Very, very to the point questions. At the end he said, well, I've asked you a lot of questions. Would you like to ask me some questions? And I had no questions to ask of the Rebbe. I thought that this was a wonderful meeting that we had just now had, and I said, no, thank you. And the fellow who was with me said, well, yes, I've spent a Shabbos or two here in Crown Heights, courtesy of this young man that I know from Lubavitch, and I hear all kinds of wonder stories about you. I hear that you know better than the doctor whether there should be surgery or not. You know better than the lawyer which way to proceed with a case. Do you know more medicine than the doctors? Do you know more law than the lawyers? I mean, what kind of thing is this? So the Rebbe smiled, and he said, you know, when a house gets built, the architect draws up a blueprint. He gives the blueprint to the contractor, and then the contractor tells the plumber how to do the plumbing, the mason how to do the masonry, the electrician how to do the electricity, the electrical work. He said it's not that the contractor can do it better than everybody, but he can read the blueprint, and that's why he can give the instructions. So he said, Hashem istakel ba'oraso vara alma, the blueprint of the world is the Torah. So somebody can understand Torah, he can tell other people what they have to do within their own métier.
It's all coming from the Torah. It's the blueprint of the world. So if someone understands the Torah, they could give over for the rest like a contractor. I found that to be, I never saw that video before, and I found it to be so spot on. Okay, so we'll end the class with that. Next week, God willing, Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., we're going to be walking out of the office and focusing on the home. So let's just put that up on the screen. It's going to be called, lesson one, meaning at work. Next week, it's going to be called Family Bliss. We're going to get a Jewish perspective on family cohesion, on ensuring maximum support and benefit from healthy relationships and harmony, how to transform our home to be a place of kindness, a family unit, having the right priorities, perspectives to guide us in life. All right, with that, we'll end the call for the first lesson. I'll just stop the recording. We'll focus also on the Zoom if anyone has questions. Just share.
When is the recording available?
Tonight.
And